and welcome back to another edition of Around the Association. I'm your host, Charles Fallon, back in here with another episode. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about from the Mile High City. Todd Kidd is the only driver to win multiple races this season, and he's won four of them now. Four wins in 2027 for the championship leader in the ASCA's first rain shortened event. Well, the Cup Series' first rain shortened event in the last 160 races. We'll talk about the monumental victory for Kidd, and we'll talk about his commanding record 35-point advantage he has over second place point man Graham Darty. Is the championship fight over? We'll break it all down. We also had to talk about Chris Barrymore. He's been on a red hot streak of late, but he has not won. Three straight second place finishes. Seems like that five team is finally starting to click, but is it too little too late this season? We'll also talk Craftsman Series. Caden Dunham, surprise, surprise, wins again. But I think the much more interesting narrative going on right now is this championship fight is absolutely berserk right now. We have five drivers within 3 points. This is the closest title fight in series history. Only five races to go. We'll break that all down and see who comes out with that. We're also going to talk silly season because we had a bombshell drop this morning. Hey, you know who Andy Hayward Jr. is? If you don't, he's going to be in a cup ride next year. He'll be driving the number one for Dexter Andrews Motorsports. Yeah, we'll talk all about that shock hire and much more when we get to it. And then we got to preview the ASCA's first split weekend of the campaign. The Craftsman Series heads back to the East Coast in Orlando. The Cup Series wraps up its West Coast swing in San Diego. So we'll break that all down and preview the upcoming week of action at the very end of the show per usual. But first, we got to shout out the ASCA's Discord server. You already know. Click that link in bio and join. We got 105 members in there right now. We talk everything ASCA. News, reports, stats, results, standings, all that, you name it. Yours truly providing a ton of inside information in there if you want to stay up to date with everything going on in the sanctioning body. So click that link in bio and join. It's a fantastic time. And we also got to shout out Circle B Diecast / Plan B sales. Use coupon code ASCA for reduced shipping on any orders $30 or more inside the US. So without further ado, let's get into it. And Todd Kidd is finally a Denver winner. I was going to say once more, but this is actually his first win at Denver, which is shocking considering it's his eighth time the Cup Series has been here. And I'll start this off by talking about the rain aspect that obviously complicated things, because I understand that fans are upset at race control's decision to call the race early. I get it. I certainly understand why they'd be upset, for sure. But you got to remember, Denver Raceway does not have lights. When you look at the weather forecast, they showed it multiple times on the broadcast. It wasn't looking good. It was an extremely large storm cell that had circled the racetrack and wasn't projected to go away until after the sun sets. And obviously, this time of year, the sun sets extremely early. So I think race control really kind of had their hands tied here. There's really not much more they could do, honestly. And I think that their decision to kind of call the race as soon as possible and not make the poor fans who were already soaked, sitting soaking wet, sellout crowd. Shout out to the Denver fans, Denver faithful for pulling up. But yeah, letting the sellout crowd, leave as soon as possible and duck for cover instead of having them sitting and waiting out there for 30, 40 minutes, an hour to see if, they can drive the track, if they can get it in. Like, I think that realistically, they had lost the racetrack. It's a 1 mile track, so it takes about, like an hour or so to dry. And again, with the way the rainstorm was working, it wasn't looking like it was going to let up until after sundown. Like, I think they made the right decision. And I think that part of it also has to do with the fact that it was Todd Kidd that's the benefactor. And we're talking about a Todd Kidd that's won 14 races over the past 4 seasons combined. I think maybe people, well, not maybe, people are definitely sick of seeing him winning, but I mean, he's the best driver in the sport, hands down. And yeah, he was right place, right time. And you got to blame Chris Barrymore more than anything. He had the inside track to victory lane. He had dominant car for much of the day, started from pole position, led the most laps, I believe all 73. And fun fact, Barrymore's actually led the most laps of any driver this season. This is pretty astonishing considering he's only eighth in points. But yeah, Barrymore, we'll talk about him later in the show. But yeah, Kidd, when the pressure was on, everyone knew that it was probably going to be a race to halfway. Barrymore knew it, Kidd knew it, and guess who came out on top? Kidd baited Barrymore into a mistake. He locks up entering turn 3. Kidd drives by on the bottom. That's it. That's the end of the race. About 15 or so laps later, the rains fall, the skies open up, and that's the race. And I think that for Todd Kidd, you can call the win Mickey Mouse. I just think it's a cope, honestly. Like you look at his 21 previous career wins before that, none of them were rain shortened. We haven't had a rain shortened race at the Cup level in over a decade. 160 races. The last time we had a rain shortened race was 2017 at Belltown in the Honor Zone 200. Norm Lester won that race, by the way. So yeah, it's just a cope. Kidd was probably going to win it anyways. Although I will say, if we did have another 10 to 15 laps, Cameron Atwood maybe has something to say about that. But I also think we would have had pit stops, and that would have kind of equaled the balance because, of course, Atwood's car really started to come alive on the long run. So we would have probably started a new stint. And I think that Kidd probably holds him off. Like he was going to win anyways. And yeah, so let's talk about Todd Kidd and really this historic stretch of dominance that he's been on as of lately. I mentioned it earlier, but 14 wins in the past 4 years. Here's a fun fact. Nick Orchidi, 2016 Cup Series champion, former Windows 300 winner. He did not ever win the Windows 200 or the Ajax 200, but he's a fringe Hall of Famer. I won't be surprised if he gets in at some part. Like we all know how good Nick Orchidi is and how good he was throughout his career. Like throughout the majority of his career, he was a perennial title contender, year in, year out. Obviously not as good as his younger brother, but certainly a quality driver and one of the best to ever do it. Todd Kidd has won as many races in the past 4 years as Nick Orchidi has won in his entire career. Let's talk Dan Rogers, right? We all know the success he's had in the ADRS since leaving Michael White Racing and the ASCA, but obviously a multi-time Ajax 200 winner, Windows 300 winner, certainly a quality driver in his own right, probably the best to never win a championship. Todd Kidd won as many races over the past 4 years as Nick Orchidi and Dan Rogers have won throughout their entire careers. Like, that puts into perspective just how historically dominant Kidd has been over the past 4 years. And the crazy part about it is we still have 6 races to go this season. And we know that Ronnie Woods Motorsports are unequivocally the team to beat. You can call it illegal equipment all you want. Again, that's just another cope, to be honest with you. It's just no one's stopping this 9 team right now. And you look at the remainder of the schedule, San Diego, oh yeah, Todd Kidd, that's his home track. He's won there 3 of the last 5 years. You look at Ajax Super Speedway, oh yeah, Todd Kidd's won the last 2 races there. You look at Computer Motor Speedway, oh yeah, Todd Kidd's won the Windows 300 2 times in the last 4 years. He led the second most laps in this year's Windows 300, finished 3rd. So clearly, like their high-speed aero-sensitive track program, really, really good. You look at the Stoneyard, oh yeah, Todd Kidd's won there multiple times. Fast forward to West Virginia, oh yeah, Todd Kidd dominated there earlier this season. You look forward to Belltown, oh yeah, Todd Kidd's won there multiple times as well. Like, there's no track that I look at on the schedule and say the 9 team is going to be terrible there. I think they could realistically, they could go out and win all 6. Now, are they going to win all 6? Probably not. But he's the odds-on favorite, certainly heading into all 6 of those races. I don't see how you say that he's not. Maybe other than Belltown, but you look at the next 5 races at least, he should have the championship locked up well before Belltown. And let's get into that because this is a historic, really, season that Todd Kidd is putting together. Absolutely historic. And I'm going to rattle off his statistics for you. So he has 37 points in 11 races this season. Now, if you're new to the ASCA, the point standings work like golf. So you want to have the least amount of points, the better. The most amount of points is Danny Bradford right now with 212. He's sitting last in the standings. Todd Kidd has 37 points in 11 races. To put that into perspective for you, in the Craftsman Series, the 60 team, leading the point standings, the owners' point standings, with 5 wins on the campaign, 4 pole positions, 290 laps led, they have 49 points in 9 races. Now, granted, they have 1 DNF, another finish outside the top 10. But again, it just kind of puts into perspective what we're seeing from Todd Kidd this season. You want some more perspective to that, huh? All right, let's dig up last year's championship standings around this time. The points leader last year was Braden Bennett after Denver, right? Braden Bennett had 77 points this time last year. 77. So that means Todd Kidd has 40 less points than Braden Bennett did at this time last year. That's insane. Like, if Todd Kidd was having this season last year, he would have ran away with the championship by 40 points. He'd have a 40-point advantage over Braden Bennett last year. Like, that just puts into perspective how historically dominant Kidd has been this season and why the field is struggling so much to keep up with him. Even a guy like Graham Daugherty, if you look at his statistics, they're not bad. They're not bad at all. He's got 1 win, 4 top 5s, 10 top 10s, 1 pole, 161 laps led, only 1 DNF, and he's 35 points back in the standings. Like, any other year, Daugherty would be leading the points. But this year, Todd Kidd is he's on another level. And let's flash back even further. We're going to go back to 2025 here. After 11 races in that incredible title fight between Todd Kidd and Diego Urquidy, Kidd was leading the points after 11 races in 2025, but he had 43 points. So that means Todd Kidd right now, as it stands, is having a better season than he was when he beat Diego Urquidy for his maiden Cup Series championship. And we all know the extraordinarily high level he had to drive at that season to best Diego. And he's having an even better year this year. Like, realistically, I don't want to take anything away from what Braden Bennett did last season, but realistically, he is Todd Kidd that is 1 corner away, a couple corners away, I should say, for being potentially a 3-time champion on the balance. And I think that at this point, I think you kind of have to say it's over. I have a hard, like I just listed off, the last 6 races on the calendar. I don't see how anyone catches him. I really don't. He's up by 35 points. Unless this 9 team has a massive meltdown, I think that if he leaves Ajax Super Speedway, right, with over a 25-point lead, I think it's over. If he DNFs at Ajax, I would say that Daugherty or Ward, realistically, it's going to be Daugherty. He's the only guy within 40 points of Todd Kidd in the standings. So realistically, if Todd Kidd DNFs at Ajax Super Speedway, Daugherty has to capitalize. I think that's his only real chance. But then you head to San Diego next week. First off, before we even head to Ajax, we head home for Todd Kidd. We head to San Diego. And again, he's won there 3 of the last 5 years. And oh yeah, that includes the last 2 years. So, I mean, there's a realistic chance he could have damn near a 40-point advantage heading into Ajax Super Speedway. So even if he DNFs, he finishes last place, he's still going to come out of that with, and Daugherty wins and leads the most laps, so he'll probably still come out of that, Todd Kidd will. with about a 16, 17 point advantage, still nearly a full race. So, yeah, it's just kid's been on another level this season, and you can't take anything away from him. I know everyone wants to point to the equipment. You can say it's illegal. Again, I just continue to say it's a cope because you look at the rest of the Ronnie Woods Motorsports drivers, we know the talent that Colin Ward and Shane Park and Chris Barrymore, they have incredible talent. Why aren't they? Why aren't they much closer in the standings to Todd Kidd? Other than the fact that Todd Kidd has just stepped up his game to an elite level. Not even, I don't even think elite is good enough to describe what Kidd is doing this season. It's a legendary level. Legendary. Like this season for Kidd, this title run is giving me so many Randall Woods 2021 vibes where Woods was just historically dominant all year. They led 615 laps. The only thing missing for Woods was the wins. He only won 3 races. Kids won 4. So I just think it's inevitable that at this point, Kidd's going to secure that second championship, and you can't take it away from him. I don't care what you want to say about illegal equipment or all that stuff. Like this season, if Kidd can hold on, I think it's not a matter of if, but when he secures that second championship, he will certainly be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And we have to realistically begin putting him in the GOAT conversation. No cap. Like, I'm dead serious about that. If he keeps this up, I'd say if he wins maybe another 3 or so races next year, if he wins another championship, if he gets to 25 wins and 3 championships, we have to start talking about Todd Kidd as the greatest of all time, especially in this day and age with the level of competition so high. Like, what an extraordinary season for Todd Kidd. And let's talk about his teammate here. We mentioned him briefly a little bit earlier, but Chris Barrymore. So Barrymore obviously has had his fair share of struggles. He's caught his fair share of flack since joining Ronnie Woods Motorsports, to say the least. I mean, I've given him his fair share of flack on the show, But it seems like finally that gamble that Ronnie Woods Motorsports took to poach crew chief Kurt Kimball away from the Ford development program, bring him over to Chris Barrymore, a guy who Barrymore is extremely familiar with. They won, 16 or so Craftsman Series races in the past. Something's finally clicked for them. I don't know what it was. I think it was really probably that second race at Michigan. They finished top 10, and they've really been on a roll ever since. And now since the Windows 300, it's been 3 straight runner-up finishes, and Barrymore has finally, I think, performed on the level of his teammates for really the first time throughout his Ronnie Woods Motorsports tenure. In fact, he's been better, I would say, than Shane Park. I don't think he's been on Colin Ward's level. I think that Ward obviously got extremely unlucky with his brakes breaking at Salt Lake. Otherwise, he wins that race going away. But he has performed better than Shane Park, I would say, these past 3 weeks. And 3 straight runner-up finishes. Clearly, this 5 team, they're firing on all cylinders. But unfortunately, it's too little too late when it comes for the championship. But I will say for Barrymore, I think that you have to be optimistic if you're Ronnie Woods. Like, you signed him to a 4-year contract. He's only 29 years old. So the contract runs through his age 31 campaign. You knew that this wasn't, you wanted it to be an overnight thing, but the long-term commitment aspect of it being a 4-year contract makes it to where, like, you knew that if it didn't work out immediately, you were going to give him time to figure things out. And you get Carter Williams out there, and we see Carter Williams is one of the worst crew chiefs in the ASCA. He's done absolutely nothing with Calvin Terry III in the Craftsman Series. And I know that you could say, oh, Calvin Terry III is, a bum. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but you also have to consider he did nothing with Ross Jackson as well for 3 years. And we know the talent that Ross Jackson has, even if he hasn't had the greatest season. Like, Ross Jackson is extremely talented. And he really struggled for the majority of the season with Chris Barrymore. So you bring in Kurt Kimball in the fold, and I think that really we're starting to see it make a difference. And Ronnie Woods as a motorsports as a whole has improved to such a dominant level now that the 5 team is performing up to snuff. And now they have all 4 cars performing at an elite level on a weekly basis. And now it just seems like a formality that, it's going to be a RWM 1, 2, 3, week in and week out. It seems like at some point in the race, whether it's the start or the finish, it's a 1-2, it's a 1-2-3. Like, it's never just one Ronnie Woods Motorsports car up there. They're all up there. And that's what makes this season just so impressive, from what they've done. But as for Barrymore as a whole, I think that you want to see him obviously continue this. And I think that he's going to I think the next 2 weeks are really going to kind of make or break. Like, is this actually the true Chris Barrymore? Will the real Chris Barrymore please stand up? Will the real Chris Barrymore please stand up? I think we're going to get that answer the next 2 weeks, because historically, he's been awful at San Diego and he's been awful at Ajax Super Speedway. Now, he did finish third at Ajax Super Speedway in the season opener, but San Diego, he has been historically terrible. He DNF'd on the opening lap in this race last year. He's DNF'd here a bunch in the past. I don't think he's ever finished top 5 here. Like, we all know Barrymore's major weakness is short tracks. And luckily for him, we only have 2 more this season in the final 6 races. Now, I think looking forward, you look at the Stone Yard, you look at Computer Motor Speedway, you look at West Virginia. Like, I think that he certainly has an opportunity to win, more races there down the line. But that's another thing we got to talk about with Barrymore is, can he handle the pressure of competing for a Cup Series championship? Like, truly, we see the difference. We saw the difference between himself and Todd Kidd firsthand. We saw it in the closing laps when they knew the rain was going to hit. One of them cracked under pressure. The other one didn't. And, obviously, Todd Kidd winning the race tells you who cracked under pressure. And at this point, for Barrymore, you've been in the Cup Series for 11 years now. You're 29 years old, and you're still cracking under pressure. Like, at some point, we just kind of have to accept that. Again, not to say that Barrymore is a bad driver, but if you're going to compete for a championship, you have to be able to deal with pressure. It's kind of part of the job. So, yeah, that part is extremely concerning to me, but I am overall optimistic about this 5 team. 8th in points right now, considering where they started the season. They look lost again, but then they got the win at the Stone Yard. Then they disappeared for another 3 weeks, but now it seems like they're finally hitting their stride. Crew Chief Kurt Kimball and those guys have finally figured something out, and we'll see if they can keep up that momentum the remainder of the season. But let's talk Craftsman Series here. And Caden Dunham won again. Shocker, I know. It actually is kind of surprising because Andy Hayward Jr., we'll talk about him in a second, snatched pole position, shockingly, from Dunham. That one definitely caught me off guard. Shout out to Hayward. He put together a mega lap because we know Dunham's routine now. It is basically a routine. He goes out, he dominates his practice. He puts up a lap on the board that's about 2 or 3 times better than anyone else. And then he just takes happy hour off, shows up in qualifying, snatches pole position, goes out, gets an amazing start, leads every lap and wins the race. Like that, it's been that same routine for pretty much every Craftsman race this season. I would say outside of Michigan and this one, where obviously he didn't get pole. But you forgot about that by the time they reached the backstretch on the opening lap, because Dunham pulled off an incredible start. He didn't get the greatest start, actually, because Drew Taylor spun the tires behind him. He had a terrible launch. So Dunham had to take matters into his own hand. He side drafts Hayward Jr. down into turn 1, draws even with him, sends it in the corner, gets to the stick, powers around the outside through the center up off, and the rest is history. He drives off and leads all 75 laps in the ASCA's first caution-free event since 2022 to win the race. So Dunham wins again. Not surprising. We'll talk more about him and see if he can complete the undefeated season at the Stone Yard next month. But this championship fight is mind-blowing. This is insane stuff. This title fight is ridiculous. Look at these. I'm going to read off these point standings for you. So we have Jordan Reynard leading the standings right now. He scored on 67 points. Zach Trenton is tied with Reynard for the points lead at 67 points. Reynard holds a tiebreaker due to having more top 5 finishes. Will Moon holds the 3rd spot in the standings with 68 points. So he's only one back of Reynard and Trenton. Ryan Dixon holds the 4th spot in the standings with, you guessed it, 68 points. And Moon holds the tiebreaker due to his win at Orlando. And then you have Garrett Hood, who dropped. He finished 7th, dropped to 5th in points, but he's only 3 back from the points lead. And it's like, so we have 5 drivers within 3 points of each other with only 5 races to go. This championship fight is insane. And truth be told, honestly, I think I'm putting my money on Ryan Dixon to win this thing. I think he's the only guy I really trust. You know, I want to say I trust Trenton, but he just can't bring home the results. He runs extremely well. He's won 2 poles. He's led 57 laps, but he still has yet to win. And look at his top 5s and top 10s. He only has 2 top 5s all season. That's the lowest of any title contender, which is shocking considering he has 8 top 10s and he's the only title protagonist with 2 pole positions. And he's led the most laps of any title protagonist. So I feel like it's Trenton, but a lot of that, I will say, is not due to Trenton like choking. It's just due to circumstances. And I think that if Trenton can get some luck, I think that he has probably the 2nd best shot. But Ryan Dixon has really come alive as of late. Outside of, you take away his incident in Salt Lake, which obviously you can't, but outside of that, he finished 3rd at Belltown. He finished 2nd at the Michigan Road Course. He finished 2nd at the TreatMyPC.com 150. He finished 2nd again at Denver. Like, Dixon really started the season off slowly, but 2016 Craftsman Series champion. He's won 10 Craftsman Series races. He hasn't won this season, but we know that he can. He's been there. He's done that many times before. He defeated Randall Woods for a Craftsman Series title, for God's sakes, at 21 years old? Like, come on now. This is going to be light work for him. Especially considering he's not in the best equipment, because Reynard is also in the same Ford development program equipment, but no one's going to argue with the fact that Dixon is a better driver than Reynard right now. So, yeah, I think that Dixon has to be the odds-on favorite. I think that, but realistically, they're all within 3 points of each other. Any one of these guys could win it. And then you have Travis Wolff lurking 15 points back and 6. Like, he's not completely out of it either. And it's absolutely crazy. And we're going to talk more about this as we transition into previewing Orlando next week. But thank God this is a standalone weekend. So we get to see these 5 and even these 6 with Wolff involved. We get to see these 6 fully spotlighted and them on full display. We don't have to witness them battling it out for 2nd or 3rd or 5th or 10th or something crazy. Like, no. One of these guys, if you want to win this championship, you need to make a championship statement at Orlando. The problem is, I don't think anyone wants to win this championship as it stands. I really don't. And Reynard should have had the inside track as the only driver in the ASCA without a DNF this season, but boy, did he fumble the bag. 16th place, my guy, in Ford development program equipment, a lap down. That's embarrassing. And especially as a championship leader, that's unacceptable this late in the season. So he needs to tighten up. And like I said, we'll break it all down as we head to Orlando next week. But yeah, if you're not watching the Craftsman Series, I get it, because Dunham's been dominating and he's won damn near half the races of the season. He's won over half the races of the season so far. But yeah, like, you are definitely missing out with this historic title fight we have on our hands. Now let's talk silly season here. In Dexter Andrews Motorsports, they announced their 2028 lineup. And before we get to what everyone else is buzzing about. We've had a couple shock silly season announcements this season so far. Well, we've had a bunch actually, considering who is still on the open market for that matter. But um before we get into the biggest, I would say, shock silly season hire I've seen in a very long time, outside of obviously Tico Bowden's many hires over the years, questionable hires that is over the years. Let's talk about Cole Andrews getting his big break in the number 10 car, replacing Noah Booth next season. Now, this is where I thought Andy Hayward Jr. would go. And of course, Cole Andrews is the son of, yes, that Dexter Andrews. So he's the team owner's son. But I don't think this is a nepotism hire. Although we didn't really see much out of Andrews in his debut to make you think, wow, he's a generational talent. He's going to be really good. But we also didn't see anything out of him in his debut that made you think, man, this guy stinks. He put on a solid account for himself. He finished 11th. Not great, but you got to consider Dexter Andrews Motorsports as a whole were absolutely god awful that race weekend. And I think that we're going to get a much more accurate representation of the true talent that Cole Andrews has this weekend at Orlando, stepping back behind the wheel of the number 16. So I'm really interested to see how he does at Orlando and San Diego before I pass judgment on this hire, because honestly, we really don't know that much about him right now. He's only made that one ASCA start thus far. So I don't really know what to say. So check back in with me on this at the end of the season. But I don't think it's a bad hire for sure. And like I said, I mentioned this when Dexter Andrews Motorsports let go of Noah Booth. They need to take swings on young talent. And yeah, this is a nepotism hire, but Andrews is also an extremely young talent. He's only 17 years old, 3-star prospect. They got to take a swing on him. So I respect the gamble in that aspect. And I also must say, even though it is an incredibly puzzling hire, I definitely respect the gamble and the team. It takes balls of steels, I should say. It takes balls of steels. But hold on. It takes balls of steel to go out and hire a driver who only has 4 ASCA starts under their belt and put them in a cup car full time. Like, this is a Tico Bowden Motorsport balls of steel level hire from Dexter Andrews here. Because if it works out, he's a genius. He's absolutely a genius. And he found a diamond in the rough that could potentially save his, I would say, probably the worst team in the ASCA, with TBM obviously merging into St. Paul Bowden Racing next season. But if it doesn't work out, then again, this is a Tico Bowden Motorsports level incompetence hire, So they took a massive gamble to ink Andy Hayward Jr. on a 2-year, $4 million contract to drive the number 1. Now, for context, the team did try to sign Carson Smith and Cameron Atwood, and as expected, both of them turned down DAM, which is not a surprise because, again, DAM have not been good this season. You look at where they're at in the point standings, they're 20th and 22nd. Like, realistically, this team is nothing without Laquan Scranton. And it really just goes to show how much he was carrying them on his back all the way into a championship fight back in 2024. Astonishing that he managed to win, 5 races in a span of 2 years with this team, because without him, they've gone right back to being back markers. And again, as I mentioned, with TBM no longer being on the grid, you take out the 10, you take out the 14, we're looking at these guys being 2 of the 3 worst full-time drivers this season in Romo and Edwards. So yeah, that obviously is not looking good for them right now. So they were never going to attract any big name free agents. I think that was pretty clear. But so with that in mind, and with really no other prospects to turn to, they just decided, why not? Let's take a dart throw at Hayward Jr. Let's see if it works out. And like I said, I respect the gamble. This is most certainly a gamble. of epic proportions to throw a guy in with only 4 full-time starts to his credit, and he hasn't won in any of them. Furthermore, he's 25 years old right now. He is going to be 26 years old next season. Like, this is a hire that's just a major, it goes against everything that team owners, specifically successful team owners, are looking for in the ASCA these days. If you're going for a 25, 26-year-old talent, you want someone proven like a Colin Ward or a Carson Schmidt, you know? Like, it just goes against everything that team owners have been hiring in recent years, especially when it comes to these young talents that have really taken over the sport in this most recent wave of youth as of late. So, again, I don't know how this is going to go. I think that you can't deny that Andy Hayward Jr. has talent, but does he have cup level talent? We barely even seen him race in the Craftsman Series, and he's performed well in the Craftsman Series. But again, we barely seen him race. He hasn't ever ran a full season at the Craftsman level. It's a shocking hire. I get why they did it because they really didn't have any options. Their back was against the wall, but man, Dexter better pray to God that this works out, or he is going to look like the biggest lunatic in the garage area with Tico Bowden Motorsport, with Tico Bowden no longer managing a team. So we'll see as this works out. But like I said, I respect the swing for the fences. Most certainly, you got to take swings to hit. And DAM hit the last time they took a major swing like this. They hit on Laquan Scranton. So we'll see if it pays off. But man, if it doesn't, the media is going to have a field day with Dexter, to say the least. Now let's preview this upcoming weekend of action at San Diego and Orlando. Going to be a fun race weekend, I believe. Yeah, so we'll start with Orlando. As I mentioned, standalone race date. Cole Andrews, Alexander Hall, Brennan Caldwell, Jack Brazier filling in for the Cup guys who are obviously going to be in San Diego. We'll talk about that in a second. And as I mentioned, I think that full focus is going to be on the title contenders in this race. Zach Tretton, Ryan Dixon, Will Moon, Travis Wolf, Garrett Hood, Jordan Reynard. Full focus is going to be on these guys. These guys need to step up. One of them has to make a statement. I wouldn't say has because, yeah, whenever it seems like someone's in prime position to win a championship, they say, here, you can have it. Here, you can have it. No, I don't want to win it. You can have it. You can have the championship. It's been bizarre the way that the season has gone, to say the least. But yeah, so looking at the championship, and just kind of looking back to this race last year for kind of a quick refresher on what happened. Yeah, so Caden Dunham, this race was actually rain delayed, and it was a night race last year. Pretty crazy. In the opening stages, had a bunch of yellows, a bunch of guys got involved in crashes early on. But Caden Dunham, qualifying pole, absolutely blitzed the field. And this is where he really started to kind of figure out his groove, because it was at this stretch where he was just absolutely dominant, specifically on the short tracks at Orlando and San Diego. But obviously, Dunham's not entered in the field. He's going to be racing in the Cup race on Saturday afternoon. So Dunham's not entered in the field. Luckily, the series doesn't have to worry about that. But I look at one of these title contenders and I say that, why can't one of them go on a similar run to Caden Dunham? Obviously, other than the fact that they're not as talented as Caden Dunham. But yeah, why can't it be one of these guys? So yeah, just I think that, like I said, one of these guys needs to make a championship statement. You look at the title fight, we're only going to have 4 races left. We'll have a date with Ajax Super Speedway. We're going to have a date with Stone Yard, San Diego, and then Belltown. So a bunch of short track races coming up right after this. Like, if you can run well here, you have a really good shot at having an inside track to this championship, considering the amount of short tracks remaining on the schedule. That being said, I think my pick is going to be Ryan Dixon. As I mentioned, I think that he has the best shot. He's been the most consistent, specifically as of late, outside of Salt Lake. He's been there, done that. He's won at Orlando, I believe, multiple times before. I know he's won it here at the Craftsman level. He scored his first win here at the Cup level at Orlando. I think Dixon gets the job done. I think that he takes firm control of this championship heading down the stretch. Um, so yeah, that's really my bold prediction. Ryan Dixon finally scores his first win of the season, first win full time racing for the Ford Development Program behind the wheel of the number 12. Now let's talk Cup Series here. And obviously, as I mentioned, Todd Kidd's the odds-on favorite. Hometown hero, Silicon Valley native, heading to San Diego once more. Won this race the past 2 seasons. Championship leader by 35 points. Todd Kidd's the odds-on favorite. Now, as for who's going to challenge him, I think Greg Healy has finally begun to iron things out a bit. He had that really rough stretch there the past month, specifically the Michigan swing with all those DNFs and finishes outside the top 10. Healy has finally kind of stabilized things, but he hasn't had race-winning pace all season. So I don't know if we can really count on him. Cayman Atwood, though, really needed that top 5 finish at Denver last time out, finished 3rd. I think that gives him a lot of momentum heading into this race that he's definitely going to need. I really don't think that any of the Ronnie Woods Motorsports guys, though, besides Todd Kidd, are going to be ones to watch. I think Shane Park could be. He led a lot of laps in this race last year. I think he led the most. I know that Todd Kidd did pass him late for victory, like within 15 laps to go or so. So I think that Park could be a threat, but he's not really known for his short track prowess. So I wouldn't bank on that. He's rather hit or miss here, although he has run moderately well here in the past. But I don't think Ward and definitely not Barrymore are going to be factors. I think Doug Bowden, if he could ever catch a break, which it seems like he never can, like it seems like whenever he's running top 5, either Caden Dunham happens or the car breaks. So if Bowden can ever catch a break, I think that he's going to have a shot, but knock on wood, because it seems like that never happened for him. And I think for Toyota, you got to look at Braden Bennett. Bennett has really kind of stabilized himself. We didn't really hear much of him on the radio on, Saturday? Although obviously it was a pretty short race. He was working his way through the field pretty well. I don't know if he had top 5 pace, but he was finished 6th. Pretty solid outing. And that team just needs to string together just a consistent string of top 10s, considering, again, they only have 6 on the season in 11 races. So they seem to be consistent, and this is a big opportunity, I think, for Bennett to at least win. Obviously, as I mentioned, like the championship is over for him, but this team needs to experiment. They need to figure out where Ronnie Woods Motorsports and specifically Todd Kidd are beating them and come out stronger next year. And see if he can win his 2nd championship. But this pick is not going to surprise anyone. I'm going with Todd Kidd. I think it's obvious. He's just been red hot as of late. He's been red hot at his home track as of late. Todd Kidd will get the job done and win for the 3rd straight season in San Diego. So that's it for this edition of Around the Association. I'm your host, Charles Fallon, signing out, and we'll see you after another, hopefully, fun weekend of ASC action set to come very soon. Goodbye.